the Avalon Hill Game Company started back in the 50s, where they put out their first game, which was basically just this guy who invented this game, Charles S. Roberts, who invented a game called Tactics. And he established his own company, Avalon Hill, to publish his game. And Tactics is widely recognized as the first modern war game. It was sort of the first war game that sort of came in a box and had everything you needed to play. It had the hexagonal squares on the map. It had the different tanks and infantry and whatever is in the game, and you could fight out little battles. Because before that, wargaming has a long history, but it was usually played solely with miniatures. And you would build your own battlefield, and there would be all these rule sets. And this is something that goes back really to the late 18th century, where people would play like that. But Tactics from the 50s was the first real modern board game where you could buy War in a box.
Finally,
you could get War in a box, right? And it was really only a few years later, when Tactics 2 came out, that it really broke through. So Tactics 2 is probably rightly known as the game that really launched the genre, even though there is a Tactics before that.
So Tactics 1 fell flat. Tactics 2, the advanced Tactics, is where everything started.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he just figured out, a way to market his game, and he had established his company, and he had a bigger reach, and he just found that little community of players, and he put out also the game a few years later, Gettysburg, which was also, one of the premier war games of its days and genre-defining game. And he introduced many new concepts in Avalon Hill. And the point of this whole story is that Avalon Hill was primarily a war game company.
Yeah, that's what I also connect with the early Avalon Hill releases. Like everything is about naval warfare or submarines or civil war, and like a lot of counters and a lot of hexes and a lot of dice rolling for infantry and stuff like that.
Sounds like Avalon Hill to me. I mean, they did have some ventures in trying to be popular. I mean, at one point, they released a series of children's games, for example, but they were not very successful. People wanted war. I think they were trying to go a little bit light on war, but that may also be the reason that it didn't really succeed. I mean, they did release some pretty successful sports games about baseball and American football.
Really? Okay.
But again, I think sports is also really just a euphemism for war.
Yeah, but it's like a pretty lame euphemism. I would rather play a war game than I would play a sports game. I mean, I don't see the appeal of a tabletop sports game.
But, imagine that you're a teenager and you're going with your mom to the game store and you're going to pick up a game, and mom doesn't want, like, the Korea War on her table.
Understandably, I guess.
But, a baseball game, she'd probably be cool with that, right?
Yeah,
so you're probably not going to find like the American Civil War under the Christmas tree, but you might find the new game of American football.
Yeah.
So they did have these sort of digressions from what they usually did.
Actually, now that you say American football, to me, I can sort of see that, because it does have this top-down kind of feel to it. And you're gaining ground and you're stopping to calculate your next move, at all times.
It's like trench warfare.
Yeah, basically.
You have your trench and you're trying to move your trench forward.
Yeah.
So, and they did really make some successful games. Some of them are actually quite good. I'm not big on sports games either, but, I can appreciate a good game with good mechanics, and I think they actually did do some nice sports games.
And also, of course, in the spirit of the new age, in the spirit of Wizard, we have nothing but peace and love in our hearts towards sports games.
No,
we just don't play them.
Of course. Please enjoy Avalon Hill's sports game series.
Yes. Turn off the stream now and go play an Avalon Hill sports game, and we'll see you in 3 weeks.
Something like that. But an interesting development in the 70s was the introduction of fantasy games. And this all rode on the back, really, of this peak in an interest for fantasy gaming that came mostly, you know, on the back of the success of Tolkien when he was published there in the, I think he really gained ground in the 60s, and you start to have a lot of stuff coming out. Many of the early fantasy games released anywhere in the world are sort of Tolkien's game. And again, those early fantasy games are really war games with a fantasy skin. So it'll be like, what's it called? The Battle of Minas Tirith or something, right?
Yeah.
The War of the Ring. It's like always this focus on the conflict.
So there was only one type of game, and that's conflict. So whether it's dressed up as hobbits or as NFL football players.
Yeah, but that's my theory, that Avalon Hill really only released war games. And now you even introduced the possibility that their line of children's games were, as you said, tactics for toddlers.
Yeah.
So maybe they may have been trying to imprint kids to play war games.
Yeah, exactly.
And whether those games were about, I don't know, shopping or something, there would probably still be this competitive element where you have to get there first, grab the thing first, push your opponent to the side, right? So it's very interesting that it seems that the reason that fantasy games started on the market in the mid-70s was really because fantasy as a theme had marketing value. They thought we can sell more boxes because also, I guess at the time, Avalon Hill had probably already published their first like 50 games with explosions and submarines and battlefields on the cover. And it might start to get a little old.
I'm just surprised that it boomed like that. That it could even boom, like how many submarine games or how many battlefields can you sort of dice roll your way through?
Well, if you look at a post over the number of conflicts in the world, and you imagine that
there's no shortage.
There's absolutely no shortage. And Charles S. Roberts had developed sort of the essence of a war game. And it was a formula that was then spread out over to many, many conflicts. And many of those games were also, quite similar. They had hex encounters and, these critical hit tables and zones of control, things like that, concepts that was invented basically by Avalon Hill. And I think then when they sat and had their Monday morning brainstorm meeting, like, which game are we releasing this month? It was just like, whatever war somebody was thinking of or whatever war movie they saw over the weekend, it was like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And some of the games, when you look at the game board that we have on the table here for Wizards, if you are an avid Avalon Hill war game aficionado, you might think that this would be the game board for a game like Jutland or Wooden Ships and Iron Men, which are other games released by Avalon Hill, which only consist of blue hexagons.
Just the sea.
Just the sea.
This is the sea. What did you expect for landmarks to appear on the sea? The sea is blue, so we just divided the sea into hexes.
And then you put ships on the sea, and then you can complicate matters like Wooden Ships and Iron Men with the big old sailing ships. You can have wind factor, ships can drift, they turn very slowly, they can engage, people can crawl on board another ship. There are all these dramatic moments, but it's basically all just, little chits that move around on a big blue game board. But in Wizards, it is not the sea off the coast of Jutland, and it's not the sea where Lord Nelson, he fought bravely. No, it's the cosmic sea where the enchanted isles, they flow.
Yes, because today we're not playing a war game.
No.
Because I'm going to ask you a leading question. How did we get from these naval battles and Civil War and Korean conflicts to Wizards?
Well, there is an intermediary step, because Wizards is not really a war game, and we'll get into that later. But there was a very successful, I don't know if it was so successful in its day because it got a lot of flack, but it has a cult following, which was the first real fantasy game that Avalon Hill released in 1978. They were a little bit slow. And I should say, and this is actually a fun anecdote, that Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, who created Dungeons and Dragons back in the early 70s, in 73, 74, they actually went to Avalon Hill and said, look, we created this thing that we call a role-playing game, and here are the booklets, and do you want to publish it? And Avalon Hill was like, nah, role-playing, that doesn't sound like it's ever gonna take off,
Huge
you know?
mistake.
And so they declined to publish it, which is why Gygax, he formed his own company, TSR, which is an abbreviation for the very dry tactical studies research? No. Tactical studies rules.
Wow, that sounds so boring.
Which again you can see, you can see the shadow of wargaming even in that name of, the first published role-playing game in the world, like tactical studies rules. This is everything about that speaks war game and not like a game of an exploding imagination.
No, and it just warns you that you're going to be looking up in a table a lot.
Absolutely, you're going to be rolling dice and looking at tables, and there is this tactical element. So it's really mostly about tactical battles in a fantasy world. So, and Dungeons and Dragons came out in 74, and then we have a fantasy war game that comes out in 75, which is White Bear, Red Moon. I always get that mixed up, whether it's White Moon, Red Bear, or Red Moon, White Bear.
And that's a sort of a fantasy as we know fantasy.
Yeah, it's set in this world developed by a guy called Greg Stafford, who developed a world called Glorantha. But that was a fully conceived fantasy world. So that was a world that had some kind of internal consistency. Whereas what Gygax and Arneson put out with Dungeons and Dragons, they didn't have a world. They just had elements, like a bit of folklore, a bit of Tolkien, a bit of stuff they invented. But there was no law. Like, it was only invented much later. And the first published role-playing game that actually had law was in the form of a fantasy board game, which was the Red Bear, White Moon, White Bear, Red Moon, whatever. And that was set in the world of Glorantha, which then was published as RuneQuest later, which was like really the first. There was another one, which we don't talk about so much because the guy who invented it turned out to be a major problem.
No politics.
No politics. We'll avoid discussing politics. So that was really the first game that came out with a fully conceived world. And 3 years later, a little late to the party, I would say, Avalon Hill starts publishing fantasy-themed war games.
Yes.
And the first one of the kind is called Magic Realm. And we should take a look at Magic Realm.
Let's take a look at Magic Realm, because it does bear some resemblance, visually at least, to Wizards.
So here, guys, comes Magic Realm.
Oh my God. This is so cool.
So
this looks cool.
What you see here is something that looks so enticing, and you just want to play this thing.
This is amazing. This is everything that sums up every fantasy dream, every Lord of the Rings dream, every Dungeons and Dragons dream.
I want to be in that world.
Yes.
I want to be there right now.
That's so amazing.
I want to be one of those characters fighting that big green dragon.
And the evil sorcerer, or I don't know if he's evil or not, but
definitely a sorcerer.
He looks amazing.
Very Gandalf-like.
Very Gandalf-like. Amazing.
And look also like at the artwork here of the knight. We're kind of used to this, what I think is a more like of an 80s art thing, right? Yeah. Where everyone had these muscles and big swords and look like barbarians,
voluptuous.
And you have like all the women have like big breasts and long flowing hair, and look at like the characters there. I don't know if you can. I guess you can see it. I hope you can see it. I can try to lift it up a little bit. Down there in the corner. You see this party.
But I love that they look like something out of a Robin Hood or Ivanhoe or something.
Yeah. And
more than they look out of,
They still look like people somehow. Yeah. They don't look like some teenager's idea of what it would be to be like a big buff.
They're taking it seriously, it feels like.
Absolutely. And they actually take it so seriously that if you want to try to play this game, you find out that this game is unplayably complicated. If I just open here and you can just see the setup chart for the game. which is right underneath the rule book.
Oh,
So-
wow. Okay, I see.
Already here, you have a chart where you have to put up all these different pieces and things in order to even begin the game. And setup time for this game is horrible, maybe half an hour or something.
And we have all the,
and then we have all the
the
counters, and
counters.
you can already see there's a lot of stuff in this, right?
Wow.
And the
Treasures within treasures is a thing.
wouldn't you know?
Toadstool Circle. Crypts of the Night.
Yeah, but they're cool concepts, but they're packaged like a super complicated war game.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
You can
That's a
take
lot
if
to
you
take
take
in.
out some of the tiles there, these big hexagonal tiles that the game is played on, which are also really cool actually.
here we have the Awful Valley.
And if the Awful Valley becomes enchanted, then you flip it over.
Not to be mistaken with the Bad Valley.
Yeah, that's different.
But the Bad Valley, yeah, can then become corrupted,
Yes.
as well as the Awful Valley can become really awful.
And
We have a cavern here, and it becomes the
psychedelic cavern.
psychedelic caverns.
So because when you flip them over, it's the magic world, the magic realm.
That's cool.
So you move between the magic realm
I
and
see.
the earthly realm.
I see.
So the concepts here are really, really cool.
And a ton of little counters.
Yeah, you can just see that.
Was this Avalon Hill as well, published by
Yes.
Avalon Hill? Yeah, okay.
This was the first fantasy game published by Avalon Hill, and you can see the rulebook. If you know what a war game rulebook look like, it's written like a technical manual or a law document with rules point this. You can just see, trying to.
Endless. It's like looking at the phone book.
And it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and it's all rules, and it's this like, for example, please don't forget rule 35.432. When directed to make a spell roll, he immediately rolls on the indicated spell table and applies the result to himself.
Wow.
So, the feature creep here is insane.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I guess it's a game that got a lot of hate when it came out because people felt that it was unplayable.
But it's hard to hate a game with that style of combat.
And that's the thing. And I think that's also why it has this cult following, because people really, really wanted to play this game. So
It says here, now you can be a master of magic or a powerful warrior in the magic realm.
yes.
Berserker Viking.
Yeah, you can
Willy
play anything.
Elf. What else? Terrible Witch King. A dwarf. An Amazon, a wizard, a knight, and more.
16 characters. And we even have the character cards here.
Oh yeah, yeah. These are
Do you
amazing.
wanna
These are amazing.
Display some of the character
Yeah,
cards.
because this is, if you thought the cover was cool, take a look at some of these wonderful character cards, character art. This is just insanely
The
cool.
wizard. Who wouldn't want to play this guy?
And then he has esoteric symbolism in the corner here,
They each have their own esoteric symbol, the characters.
and some stats here.
Yeah, there it starts getting complicated.
Weary of my.
Or I can
arm
also
here.
just
It's
try
a
to
little bit very flaky.
show you a little more here. Put some down, if you can see.
Amazing,
I mean,
amazing.
look at the druid here, for example.
And I love that they went a little bit alternative with the elf. He has a sideways
Yeah, that's true.
card, because that's how elves are.
They're a little sideways.
Jeden says appropriately, "Oh Lord," and I agree.
Oh, look at the witch.
Cool. And we have the woods girl.
Witch girl.
The woods
But
girl.
also look at this way of drawing. At this time,
Really naive way of drawing, but very cool.
the Amazon is a little
That's more reminiscent of
that points the direction in which
Yeah,
the
like-
art is going.
you can just see where like a person like Frank Frazetta would start his, journey into fantasy motifs.
That's a proper knight.
That's
That's
a
a proper
proper knight.
Arthurian knight, I would say.
Yeah. So these are amazingly cool.
And the Black Knight, of course.
Black Knight, look at this.
But so you can see this started an appetite for these kind of games. And I remember as a kid seeing this game in the game stores. First of all, it was ridiculously expensive. Like at that time, even I think, even in today's money, it was really expensive at the time. It was very, very expensive, and it had the highest complexity rating of any game in my local game store. But we just wanted to play it so bad, but me and my brother, but we didn't have the money, and our parents never bought it for us, and we were just looking at this game, dreaming about it, which was probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Because if we had gotten it like at 10 years old, we wouldn't have been able to make sense of it. But we'd probably come up with our own rules, but it would also be frustrating to have all this potential in there and then just not be able to engage with it.
And Dungeons and Dragons, was this before or after?
This was Dungeons and Dragons is from 1974, so this is 4 years after. So this is clearly an attempt at turning fantasy role-playing into a board game. And there are people who swear to this by this day. There are servers where people probably play it right now. There is a rule book which I believe runs now into 300 pages. So it's just expanded and exploded. And some people say it's not that difficult once you get into it, but try getting into it. It's.
But you could say the same about the Japanese language.
Not being Japanese,
It's not that easy.
So, but if at any point you find yourself unemployed for a couple of years, I would, really encourage you to take up Magic Realm, and give it a spin yourself. So this is just a little background to show you how fantasy gaming grew out of wargaming and how it for a long time was just a different way of skinning war games. Magic Realm is a little different because it actually does try to create a magic realm and not just like a hexagonal war game. So it is different, but still it's unplayable, like many war games. So 4 years after Magic Realm is actually when this thing happens that lies down here, and that is Wizards.
Attention!
And Wizards is a game that is unlike any of the other fantasy games because it is not a war game. Imagine the disappointment that fantasy wargamers must have felt in 1982 when they saw that a new game had hit the shelf.
Yes.
And they went and they picked up Wizards and they opened the box. And first of all, they found, I guess in the beginning they were excited because they were like, this game board looks exactly like Jutland or Wooden Ships and Iron Men. But then they would start reading the rules and they would discover this is a very different kind of game. Because this is actually more of a new age meditation on a better world. And
that's beautiful.
It is absolutely beautiful. And there is evil in this world because, as we already spoke about, men corrupted the elven world. But the focus is not on conflict. The focus is on how to resolve conflict. And it's also a very, very early, if not the earliest example of a so-called semi-co-op game, which means a game in which the players collaborate against the game, but there's only one winner. So I think that only one winner was probably because 1982 may not have been ready for a game where you won as a collective.
Can you think of any game in that period where you could have a common goal in the game, almost like a co-op game?
There were some examples, and the most well-known cooperative game that started the modern genre is Pandemic, which I believe is from 2008, where you work together to rid the world of diseases.
Yeah.
But that is 2008, right? That is like 25 years after this game comes out. And there are a few examples here and there. But this is a very, very early example. And especially with that semi-co-op thing where there is one winner, is really very unique. So I think there was a lot of disappointed wargamers who discovered that they had to collaborate.
What is this?
What is this? There's even rules in the game for how you save each other, and you get points for saving each other.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like a great game to me.
Yeah, it's the game everyone should play when they grew up, right?
Yeah,
but
awesome.
To me, it just boggles the mind that this game was ever released, actually. That it was, that it somehow got through the production line, that it was accepted, that...
Yeah, and that it was Avalon Hill that would champion this game.
I have an old ad from Avalon Hill
cool.
from 1982.
Cool.
So it doesn't look so fancy, but I can read a little bit from it. So this is the ad where you see the game sort of set up at the bottom. It's completely wrong set up, but that's how it usually happens
gaming.
in these things. And then it says a totally new approach to fantasy gaming. So they're aware that they're putting out something that's offbeat, right?
Sure.
And then they say another revolutionary breakthrough in adventure game design from Avalon Hill. And they're probably thinking that magicrealm was their first revolutionary breakthrough.
Yeah.
Through.
Yeah, that didn't go so well. Yeah.
And then it has this positive message, which I kind of like, where it says, it's almost as if they're describing the real world. They say, in these dark times of violence, fear, and destruction, in which every aspect of life is tainted, a ray of hope has finally emerged. One which can carry you on beyond the mundane turmoil of life into the reality of fantasy, a mythical place which has true power to affect for good the struggles which surround us all.
Insane.
They're actually describing this game as a magical artifact that will influence the world around us.
Which it may well do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the world is going to be a better place after tonight's stream.
I'm sure of it. I can already feel it starting to happen. So I think that's actually pretty forward-thinking advertising, because first of all, they're honest, or they're as honest as they can be, but they're also speaking in magical terms, as if the game could actually invoke some sort of peace on Earth.
Yes.
Which, who knows? Maybe it can.
But I think 82, I mean, the whole New Age movement, which starts back in the 60s, where the hippies start going to India especially, and they learn about this Buddhism and Hinduism and yoga and Ayurveda and all these Indian traditions, and they bring them home, and suddenly you start having this New Age religion, which is not a religion in the traditional sense. It's more like an eclectic movement where you can pick and choose your religious symbols and ideas and make your own personal religion with your own personal altar in your own living room.
Yes.
And that movement grows through the 60s, through the 70s, and it kind of peaks in the 80s. And this game is from 82.
Yes.
So again, I think Avalon Hill, more than necessarily, I mean, I don't know, but more than necessarily being super sympathetic to the New Age movement, they may also have thought, okay, let's try to put out a game that rides, on the waves of this popular spiritual movement.
Because, it was on the end, the late stages of the hippie movement, like you say, and now we're starting to turn over to a little bit more conservative approach to spiritualism, where it actually it almost becomes like a commodity, where you can buy crystals at the local store, and you can sort of buy the prog music has started to become world music, and it started to become synthesizer New Age music.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you went into sort of your local mystical shop back in the 80s to buy a deck of tarot cards and some incense and few crystals.
Definitely.
That wizards might also be on the shelf in some of those stores.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were trying to get that group of people to playing this game.
Yeah, definitely. And you could buy the latest Kitaro album, or the latest Tangerine Dream, or Jean-Michel Jarre, or whatever, dolphin covered vinyl,
But I think one of the things that when they then got this game home, some people might be surprised, because even though it in many ways is sort of a friendly and positive game, it still borrows from wargaming and fantasy wargaming, if not so much the complexity. I mean, it is way more complex than a usual family game, and the rules as they came out in the box are very poorly put together, which is actually not the fault of the designers, but it was the rules editor who basically changed the way the rules were set up. And the rules for this game was so unusual that they kind of try to put it into that wargaming standard, whereas they should probably have gone with the more organic original rule set, or whatever that was. But as I said, one thing that it borrows from the wargaming tradition is that this is a very long game. So I'm already gonna spoil it for you guys now. We're not gonna finish this game tonight.
So no peace on Earth?
I mean, maybe this game is also very difficult actually to win. So if we don't play it all the way through, we may avoid at least that the world is overtaken by darkness.
Okay, at least.
So we'll just play the nice little beginning.
Yes, I also think that already, you know, we're talking and talking, and like we said in the beginning, this stream is like a cozy new age stream. So it's about listening to early synthesizer music. It's about looking at great artwork from the 80s, and it's about just dipping our toes into this into the tile set of this game, and just sort of checking it out.
We're trying to whet your appetite to go out and get your own copy of Wizards
and some crystals
and you know have a nice week in your summer house where you play through Wizards.
Yes.
Because it doesn't take a week, but I mean I think an estimated play time of between 6 and 8 hours is not unrealistic for this game.
It's pretty substantial.
It's pretty substantial, and the more players, the longer it takes. So yeah, it can be really a big ask to get this game to the table.